Hello, my name is Nikema Prophet. I am here with Danny, and we're here to record the Our Voices podcast. Danny, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself, where to find you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Danny. I am in cybersecurity, and what I do is a lot of different security engineering work in the field, mostly what they would call blue team. And outside of that, I just try to help people to learn more about the field, the writing through Substack, and have a free course that I try to show people what they could expect early on in the job and start to get their feet wet with some of what they could expect on the job.
That is super cool because I think we need a lot more content and information around cybersecurity and that as a career field. So I'm excited to learn more about that through your Substack. And would you like to start off just like talking about like your story, like where you came from, how you got into this field?
Yeah, I could do that. So I would say it was pretty non-traditional how I got into the field. So this is probably around 6 years ago. I was doing electrical work, electrical utility. So that involves like installing pipes and pulling cable, making the connections to those cables for buildings. And it was good work. However, I knew that I wanted to do something else, and I was always interested in technology. I just didn't really know how I would go about that, what path I would take. And this is around 2016, and I didn't know that many people in the field, so it just didn't seem like something that could happen. But I couldn't shake that thought, feeling of wanting to get into the field, and especially how I saw the things going in that direction. I knew it would be a really good opportunity. So I just kept reading, researching paths to get in the field. Eventually, curiosities drive me to have like a minimum viable home lab and start playing around there. And I liked what I was learning. So I wanted to see if there was a way that somebody without a 4 year college degree in these technical fields, computer science and so forth, if somebody without that could get in. So I just kept doing research, and eventually I found a program called Year Up, which it's a job training program, and at the end you'll get an internship with it could be one of various partners, but in the end that's a good experience that you have in your resume, and sometimes people end up getting converted into a full-time role. So what I did there once I got the internship was quit my previous job of doing electrical and just went all in basically. And I was thankfully able to get converted on in that role and learned the fundamentals of cybersecurity, learned from some really good people, and yeah, I was able to get my start there. So from doing in a span of a year or so, doing complete different work in a electrical trade to doing cybersecurity, I think it's one of the few fields in tech where somebody can make that kind of jump with little with a little bit of training and hard work, be able to make that jump.
I have a question about before you got in, what was it that introduced you to the field? What was it that caught your eye to where you were like, I'm going to research this, I'm going to get into this career field? What
Yeah.
made you notice cybersecurity?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things for me. I think I was either in high school or right after high school, but I fell for one of those tech support scams where you get a message that your computer's running slow and you just need to do this routine cleaning. They usually impersonate like Microsoft and so forth if you're on Windows. And yeah, so I fell for one of those, and by the time I realized it, I it was just a feeling that I couldn't shake, like that I was that I was duped, and I was able to correct the situation. I learned how to just wipe my system, my computer, and how to be more mindful of these kind of scams. And then shortly after this, around the same time, is when I was reading about the Target breach, which at the time was one of the bigger ones, and I just wanted to learn how that actually worked, how a breach like that could happen, and what are some of the things to prevent those, to detect those. It seemed like something that an entire field was going to be dedicated to. So it was just something that really sparked my interest.
Feel free to deflect this question, but
Yeah.
what about the income potential? So I'm assuming you make more now than you did when you were doing the electrical work.
Yes.
What can someone expect? Let's say we're starting from zero. I just heard about it today. I'm going to subscribe to the Substack. I'm going to start looking into this. So from starting today, like what could I expect an average starting salary to be in a year?
Yeah. Yeah. With especially now with remote work, it might vary based off location. But for an entry level role in cybersecurity, somebody could expect roughly 80K in the ballpark for starting. So that's somebody with maybe an internship or nothing. So that's what they could expect to for their first role, and then every role after that will just keep would just keep increasing.
And that is good money. That's good money. And I think it's really important what you're doing because a lot of people don't know that these opportunities are out here. So I think I share that with you. I want as many people as possible to be making this life changing kind of money doing work that is interesting and intellectually stimulating. Like you don't have to be bored or be like super mathy or sciencey to
Exactly.
have a career in this field.
Yeah, yeah. So I echo that with, yes, some of the work can be stimulating and complex, but it's not, yeah, you definitely don't need to be like an expert in mathematics or anything like that. But yeah, it's definitely something that is doable for sure.
So if you had, let's say, a high school senior, they're graduating this year. They don't know what they want to do after high school. Maybe they'll go to college, maybe not. But if they were somewhat interested in pursuing cybersecurity, where would you point them first?
Yeah, that's a good question. To start off, I would say I would have them going to some type of roadmap that shows how big cybersecurity is because it's so broad. There's so many paths somebody can go down. So I know SANS.org has some roadmaps. TryHackMe, which is a CTF platform, has some as well. But I would start playing around with some of these CTFs, so capture the flag platforms. TryHackMe, or another good one that I like is Over the Wire, and goes through like small challenges, and each one gets a little bit more difficult, so that could get people get their feet wet. And then with the roadmap part of it, they could see what are the different paths, and they might see one that jumps out to them and just is more most interesting, whether that's penetration testing, detection, or threat hunting. There's different career paths within cybersecurity, and they might see one that is most interesting to them.
Cool. So I'm hearing that it's a big field. There are different paths to go down. So, what path did you go down? Where are you today?
Yeah, so for my internship, it was a security operations role. So that involved a lot of monitoring, like Jira, like our Jira instance, and then what's called an endpoint detection and response tool. So that's something that is deployed on like employee laptops. And then if there's cases of malware and cases of phishing, cases of other like malicious activity, it would go routed through this tool. And I would monitor that tool, make changes to it, worked on the deployment of that tool to the employee laptops. And then from there, I just was building off into like incident response, which is responding to maybe bigger threats that are going on internally, things that may require external communication. So I would I would assimilate that to like traffic control, sort of traffic control, but for cybersecurity, where you have to manage different teams or communication to different teams, different systems, and point things in the right direction. And then now I focus more on like cloud detection and coming up with logic to detect these threats. So it all falls under the either detection and response, incident response, which is a big field in within cybersecurity, and that's where I've spent most of my time. I did some penetration testing a few years ago, where that's more like the red teaming, but the majority of my time has been with what would be called blue teaming.
For those of us who don't really know the terminology, what's the difference between red team and blue team?
Yeah. Yeah, that's also something that I've gotten from a lot of folks that are very interested in the field. That's a great question. Blue teaming is the defensive side of security. So any team that is responsible for detecting threats, coming up with rules to find these threats and responding to them would fall under the blue team. And even roles like compliance, where anything is defensive, preventative, all those roles would fall under blue team. And then red team would fall under the what you call like the offensive side of the field, where
Hmm.
they're actively testing for vulnerabilities or trying to see how they can exploit those vulnerabilities. Let's say they're testing a web application and they're looking for flaws in them. That would be a red team, and they're trying to see what are the vulnerabilities, and then from there the blue team can work on either detecting those faster or if there's a way to prevent those. So it's a loop when they work together that way. But yeah, those would be the two fields or the two teams within the cybersecurity field.
Cool. Okay. That makes sense. So I know I'd heard it before, but I am not really well versed in cybersecurity. Another question that people may have, or that I have, do you have to code in your job, or do you know how to code? I guess is a first question.
Yeah.
Then do you have to code on the job?
Yeah, I do some coding with Python, Bash. So I would say more scripting than what people call as programming.
Mhm.
What I have done. Just on side projects, I've worked on some more web applications that I've built. But for cybersecurity, both like the work that I do and in general, scripting will be more common. And so that involves things like connecting a data source to another, communicating to another data source, whether that be through an API or some other resource, or cleaning up data is another common thing. Different tasks like that would be something that involves scripting, and that's usually where cybersecurity is it goes with coding. I would say the one role where a deeper amount of understanding and deeper amount of programming would be necessary would be like application security. So these teams are the ones that are more involved in the application itself, whatever's like public facing or consumer facing. So those teams, application security would be where probably the heaviest amount of coding is involved.
I guess this seems like an elementary question, but what's the difference between scripting and coding?
Yeah, that's actually something that a lot of people, if they don't know one, they might have the same thought, right? So scripting could be things where you have an interpreter. So Python is a common one. Bash if you're on a Linux or a Mac system, or PowerShell if you're on Windows. And basically, you can work all, if you wanted to, you could do a script completely from the terminal or the command prompt. Whereas you would need something more, you need like a compiler for programming. So something like Java,
Oh,
for
okay.
example.
That makes
Yeah,
sense.
which generally it's the common thinking is that those languages in the programming side are just more involved and there's more nuances in terms of less out of the box where you have to do yourself. And scripting, you might be able to get up and going quicker with less dependencies and all of those things.
Okay, yeah, that's actually really helpful. So I'm thinking like I can open up a terminal and everything that I need to write the script is already there. Like I don't need to compile anything. I don't need to send anything to like a
Right,
server and back to get a
right.
response. I could just like start typing
Yeah,
this script in this terminal. Okay, I get it.
yeah. If you really wanted to, the exception would be like certain packages you might need and installing those there, but you could do those all from the terminal if you wanted to.
So if I'm a person that maybe I'm interested in cybersecurity, but I know that I want to stay more on the writing code side of things, like I want to keep that as part of my job,
Yeah,
would it be good to start out with Python? I think you mentioned like bash scripting, or like where would you
yeah.
focus if you're like, I know I want to be in security and I know I still want hands on code? where would you focus first?
Yeah, I think you can't go wrong with either one of those, but I'll probably lean more towards Python because, so like for example, if somebody's on a Linux system or Mac, Bash is built in, and you could do basically anything that a process command needs to do. If you're going to use OpenSSL as an example or anything else, it's built into the Bash shell, and then you could just leverage those. However, for more involved and to scale more, Python would be the better choice. So I would say, yeah, I would say learning the fundamentals of Python and just being comfortable in the terminal would be where I would recommend people that want to have that aspect to the role.
Very cool. So I wonder, can you tell a story of you getting someone else, like from outside of our community in our career field, into a tech kind of career, either from like local interactions or online? Have you helped anyone take that first step into their career?
Yeah. So something that I do like to do is help people that are learning about the field and making those steps in the same position that I was a few years ago. So I've been able to help out some friends as well as people that I've met through online communities. One of those is Career Karma, where I talk to people that are looking to switch careers and they're doing their self study and then trying to see what's next. So yeah, thankfully I've been able to help out some folks there, and it's a good feeling when I talked to somebody last year, was bouncing ideas with them, and then like a couple months later, they update me. This is what I'm doing now. This is what I'm learning, and then I point them in the right direction from there. And then a couple months later, they message me saying that they got an internship and they're just ready to learn hands on. And then a few months after that, they got hired on for their first role. So things like that are very just encouraging to know that there's there's no one path to get in the field, but there's several different ways that if somebody stays consistent, you see their progress, and that they can also get into the field.
So it's been years since I have been on Career Karma. And when I was active there, it was heavily skewed towards software engineers and boot camps for that. I wonder,
Yeah.
is there like a solid cybersecurity element there? I'm assuming they've grown over the years, but I just
So
haven't
yeah,
been there.
yeah, yeah. So it definitely is. I would say software engineering as the primary focus, and just what there's more of. So they have what's called coaches there, and that's usually like their area. But they have expanded in terms of having some resources for cybersecurity, and I was able to help out there for some time. And the they have it broken up to, I believe, seven areas now, and cybersecurity is one of those. So areas of focus. So yeah, like it's grown in that aspect because although software engineering is another very promising field, could be a lucrative field, but sometimes people might have different interests, right? Whether that's like data analytics, cybersecurity, right? There's other areas where they might be more interested in.
Definitely. I definitely love that we're talking about cybersecurity now. And yeah, there's more to talk about than just learning to code. So I'm always excited to have those conversations. I want to ask about Twitter. Has Twitter been anything influential in your career? It has been for me, both in being able to meet people and also working in public and that type of thing. But I was wondering if you have any type of Twitter story of success or not success, just anything. Influential is not the
Yeah.
word that I want to use, but it keeps coming up. Yeah, I think you get the gist.
Yeah. So yeah, so I started getting after like I did take some time off of Twitter a while back, and then I want to say maybe 3 years ago I got more back into it and consistent. So I've seen Twitter as a good tool to learn from others, whether that's like senior people in the field. In cybersecurity, there is a lot of people that are like veterans in the field that are active on Twitter. So that's one of the ways that I would use it whether it's like a new threat that they're researching or talking about, or other resources that they're referencing. How I've used it, and then also talking to people just in the community. So that's been another way. I don't know if I have any one story that stands out, but just learning from people on Twitter. That's been a yeah, definitely a resource.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Personally, just having access to people at the top of our fields
Yeah,
is really, it's an amazing thing that you can leverage. And I think a lot of people don't get as much as they could out of Twitter. Like, you don't know that you're looking for a job, but Twitter can be
yeah,
an amazing help in getting you in front of the right people and getting people to see you. How did you find my link to record this podcast?
yeah. So it was actually Twitter as well. So that's it's been a way, as far as Twitter goes, a way to meet people in the community and resources. Like sometimes I'll learn about a learning platform that I just had previously never heard of before, a course, anything like that. And so I've seen it as a good resource there. And then that's where I found you and Twitter. And I saw the way you're helping people out in the community. So you always do meet, you tend to meet, I would say, more good people than not on Twitter.
That's amazing. Yeah, I was just curious because I just recorded one not too long ago, like right before we started our session. And he was recommended personally by someone because I was trying to get them on the podcast. And he was like, he passed on my link to them. So just
Awesome.
curious about how you found out. But yeah, Twitter has been amazing for me. I'm like still so excited that I get to meet people and that it's a little bit of ego where it's, oh, I'm helping people. Like I feel good that people feel that I'm providing some type of value to them. And Twitter has been just so amazing for opportunities for me. And I
Yeah.
know like a lot of I'm expecting like 99% of the people who come on the podcast to come through Twitter somehow. So that's interesting. Did you have anything else that you wanted to talk about before we wrap this up, or any project that you want to plug, or anyone that needs a shout out? We could do that now. If you have questions for me, you can ask them. They may or may not be included on the podcast. I'm still figuring it all out. But
Yeah. No
yeah, if
worries.
you had anything else that you wanted to discuss, we could do that with our remaining time.
Yeah, I just had one last anecdote that I just remember this clearly, like when you talked about the transition into the field and like what that can do compensation wise. Like when I had my first official week as a full-time employee after my internship, the process was basically you get your direct deposit set up, but due to the window that it takes, like your first check is a paper check. That's
Mm.
just like how it worked. So I remember I went to pick mine up and I went up to the roof and just opened it there like in private. But and it wasn't even about the money, but just the fact that like a year ago or less than a year ago I was working in a trade, and although it was good work, it was physical work, and now somebody is paying me to do work on computer systems and figure out things in a different way, different problem solving. I thought that was just like for me, is a humbling to know that change can happen if somebody stays consistent in a year, that something like that can change.
Definitely. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. How long have you been in that role so far?
I was at that company for about 2.5 years, and then now I'm at a different company. But in total, I've been in security for about, this summer will be 6 years, so five and a little over 5.5 is how long I've been in the field.
Wow, you're a veteran of the field.
I don't know.
I did have something I was going to ask about that. Oh, so what you're working on like currently, like in your current
Yeah.
role, are you looking to do more of the same, like just advance along the track that you're on, or do you ever think that you might change it up and try something different within cybersecurity or outside of it?
Yeah, so I have thought about that as far as what what else I want to learn and grow in. I do think the detection space, which is what I've been focusing on for mainly cloud resources, it's something that is there's always an opportunity to learn. So that's something I've been enjoying. So continuing to advance in that field in what's called like detection as code. And as far as outside of that, I think continuing to map that to like the offensive side and having a blend of skills there, I think is what I would want to grow in next.
So, in your opinion, is one side more fun than the other? Is it more fun being blue team or red team?
Ah, that's a good question. I think red teaming could be more fun depending on the project. So a lot of most of the times there's something called scope, and there's certain things that are out of scope for your test, your red team test, and that could severely limit what you can do. So that could also limit the how fun it is. So yeah, that's a tough question. I would say they they both have their aspects in which they're fun, but I enjoy the blue team side of things because that's what I've done more of. So I'll probably go with that.
My last question is around job searching. Do you have any general advice that you would give to people? So, other than be working on your skills, what
Yeah.
other general advice would you give to someone who is saying, I'm ready to look for my first position? What should they be looking out for? What should they be doing?
Yeah. So there's a few things here. I would say ideally before they go on the active search, they should be talking to people in the field. So whether that's the role that they want to go after or companies that they're interested in and trying to network with people in those roles. It could be informational interviews just to see how their job looks like, resources that they recommend, anything like that, so that by the time they're ready to go active, like full job search mode, they'll have some type of network, some type of references possibly that they can use and benefit from. So I would say that's a big piece. And then also before they go like full job search mode, look at things like LinkedIn, Glassdoor, and look at sample job descriptions that they are interested in, and see how that maps to their resume. So if they see that they're missing quite a few skills or items there, then they know what to learn before they're on the clock, so to speak, on the job search mode, and then they can be more lined up or better lined up with the resume once that time comes and they're ready to start interviewing.
So I know as a software engineer, like it helps to have a portfolio and open source contributions and things like that. Does that apply to cybersecurity too? If you have a portfolio, what would be in it? Can you do work individually before you have the job to
Yeah.
demonstrate your skills?
Yeah, it's a little bit, I wouldn't say it's apples to apples, but you can definitely have some type of open source content for yourself. So generally that is GitHub, something that I've used to either side projects that I've worked on or just that you learn. So it could even be something like somebody goes after a entry level cert and then they just put on their GitHub the material that they're using to study, and it could literally be that. So then it's just showing the path that somebody's taking, what they're learning, and showing your work, so to speak, in that way. So that could be something they do, whether they have a lab environment for anything really, for VM, for Docker, for anything, and putting that in their GitHub just to show that this is what they're learning and the time that they're spending to upskill.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I think in general, if you're trying to do anything that you have to get other people on board, it's useful to do your work in public and to learn in public because you get you get not only support, like you get like cheerleaders, like you get people who will start watching you and say,
Yeah.
I remember when they started on day one and what they were doing and now they're getting ready for their first internship. Like you start to have people who care about the work you're doing and who cheer you along the way. So I recommend that to anybody is make sure that you're meeting people and make sure that you're showing up however that looks. So If it's writing a blog post, if it's volunteering and tweeting about it, or anything. If you just read an article that's interesting and just saying, hey, this article is interesting, like all of those little things, like you feel like you're talking to yourself, but you're not. There really is a great community that we're a part of. And a lot of people are excited to see you grow and to see you succeed, because it's so gratifying to see people like get to the other side of that when you want to get in, but you're not quite there yet. It's really encouraging to see people make it, because it's not easy.
Yeah, exactly. A very supportive community, I would say, more so than other fields, right? Other like non-tech fields might not have the same exact support community, but yeah, it's definitely something that I've seen.
Yeah, and similar to you, like I don't have a college degree either. So the fact that you could spend a year learning something and be making 80K, 70K, even like 60K at a salary, like that's it's an amazing opportunity. And I just feel like a lot of people don't know. And the people who are listening to this are like, it's like preaching to the choir, because we're all in this community. But you're making me want to do more to bring more people in not a creepy way, not like because one thing I do come across is some cult like behavior. That's just in general. It's not a tech thing, but it can be a tech thing. So when I say I want to bring people in, I don't want to be creepy about it, but I do want to see more people open to those opportunities.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I'm done with my questions. If you had any final words, we could go there and we'll be done with this episode.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me here and look forward to seeing you help more people.
Thank you, Danny. It was really great to meet you. And let's go ahead and close out this episode. This has been the Our Voices podcast. We spoke to Danny about getting into cybersecurity and what that looked like a little bit for you. It was a great time. And I'm really glad that we had the opportunity to sit down and record this. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Our Voices podcast. It's time to make our shout out to our sponsor, and that is Level Up Financial Planning. If you'd like to check them out, head over to our website, ourvoicespodcast.blog/sponsors with an S, and check them out. Thanks again for listening.